Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this WIOA Title 1B Performance Office Hours. My name is Antonio Gomez with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, or ICSPS, based out of Illinois State University. I will be your moderator and technical support for today's meeting. We invite all attendees to hold all questions until the Q&A portion of the webinar. Once we reach that portion, we will call upon you to unmute yourself if you want to raise your hand. You will also be able to drop any questions in the chat as we go. If you have questions and don't want to wait until the Q&A, we will address them as we can. In an effort to be as accessible as possible, this webinar will be offering closed captioning, so feel free to turn that on using your Zoom toolbar. If you have any questions about how to do that, drop a question in the chat and I'll be happy to help you out. We will also be recording today's webinar. It will be available on Illinois WorkNet within the next couple of days at the conclusion of this webinar. All right. So Paula, if you could get us started, and then we'll get started with some polls.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Today's agenda, I just want to give you a heads up. So we're going to briefly cover a couple tips or reminders on supportive services and how those should be documented in accordance with WIOA Title I. A couple quick updates on measurable skills gain and forthcoming guidance, the eligible training provider list. Mark is going to spend a little more time covering the state's demand occupation training list guidance, the DODL, all the tiers. Then a couple quick updates on our system, Illinois Workforce Development System 2.0 version that we're developing. And then we'll have some time for questions. Okay, next slide. I'm not seeing your screen or a screen, Mark. Is anyone seeing?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Antonio, if you wouldn't mind sharing the first and second polls,
Oh,
just
absolutely.
to get a sense of who we have today.
Absolutely. I'm going to
Thank you.
launch a couple of polls. If you could please answer them, we will see who all is here. Our first poll will be performance partner polls. So let us know who you are. And then the next poll will be, where are you located? So we'll give a couple of seconds for everybody to respond. The response is coming in. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results. Looks as though we've got quite a few local board staff, Title I director, Title I performance manager, Title I career planners, other WIOA partners, WIOA stakeholders, and then where's your local area? Chicago, Northern Illinois, Central Illinois, Southern Illinois. Looks like we've got a pretty even distribution with a little bit more in Northern and Central. All right. And then Mark, would you like me to share the LWIA one as well?
No, we're okay to move forward. That is just more for us to see where everyone's located. It looks like it's pretty spread across the state. So we appreciate everyone joining us today. And apologize, I thought I was sharing my screen already. So um, uh, bear with us as we should have the screens up for you to see these slides.
Looks great.
Turn it back over to Paula to start our presentation today. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, I'm back. So as I mentioned with our agenda, everyone, I see a lot of names I'm familiar with and some who I haven't met yet. But so supportive services in our WIOA programs have very specific definitions. I won't reread you the definition, but the key is that they're necessary to assist participants. So you must be a WIOA Title I participant, youth, adult, dislocated worker in one of our programs to be eligible. So you have to be participating to receive this service code. There are several references. So these are in detail. On top of US DOL's training and employment guidance letters, 1916, 2116, and then that popular TEAGL 1016 change 3, I would always recommend having those saved on your computer. We have the Title I Services Matrix tab. That's our go-to right now if you need to look up anything on supportive services, because policy right now has draft changes that are in progress for supportive services. So one big rule about supportive services is that local areas must have their own policies on supportive services. So even if you see something in our matrix or in one of these TEAGLs at the high level DOL level, we still must have your local supportive services, and those describe what's allowable in your local area. There might be limits, certain things they don't provide. So in general, that's why it's so important for monitors. When monitors are there, that's why they want to see your local policy. If you have done supportive services and it's not there, there can be an issue, or they'll just ask you to make sure you update your policy. Next slide, please. So we do get a lot of questions, very detailed examples and scenarios about supportive services. That's why we're mentioning it today. So just to recap some expectations for supportive services. What do monitors expect to see in the system? So we know what your policy says, and you must document it as a record in IWDS or Career Connect. Monitoring expects to see the date of the supportive service, so the code on the record, to be the date that participant receives the benefit. So not the date of the administrative processing or when fiscal sees it. It's the date the person receives the benefit, just like all other services. Of course, to receive a supportive service, these are all listed: transportation, housing, childcare, all of them. You have to be an enrolled WIOA participant. After speaking with Tamika Chisholm, Laura Dom and I work together on some of this. We get so many questions, and monitors rely so heavily on the policies. And so from Tamika is, I would advise against locals using like a voucher or check date as the date you put in the system. Those dates just align with your fiscal practices when you're running checks, but not necessarily when the participant actually received the service. So that's a good rule of thumb to note for all staff. So as I was about to say, a big thing with supportive services, pick the correct type, the correct date, but make sure you have really good case notes, logic, reasoning on which you base this decision coming from local policy. And this can be hinged to financial assessments, why they need it, their individual circumstances, always the career plan. And then another key is that no other partner program can provide them. Like the WIOA for some supportive service is the source of, the last source available. We want to check and see if they have other resources for this. And then there could be funding limits. So with your participants, supportive services are by design available to make sure that they have success in WIOA. If they're paying for their own training or in a partner-funded training, but enrolled in WIOA as one of your customers, you can use supportive services. It doesn't have to be a Title I occupational skills training program from our, reported as such. But yes, you can help them in something they're paying for. And it all goes back, justification lies in their career plan, and these should include the supportive services you plan for them. one point is that in IWDS 2.0, the way in which these get reported and tracked and the definition will be expanded and probably easier and much more transparent. Okay, next slide, please, Mark. I'd like to provide an example of a scenario. We get asked this a lot, and this was a really clear example. So again, which date should be entered on a supportive service record? Here's your example for when someone might come in. So say then your policy allows housing and you've assessed that this is needed for them to keep working or going to their training program. So the first time they come in, they get their one-time rent payment so they can keep their house. And at that time, so they're in there, you're talking with the customer, an authorization is written for their rent assistant, and the customer walks away with that and they take it to the landlord. But then the actual check is cut and paid to the landlord at a later date. So when do you think your staff, you or your staff, what date would you use on that housing supportive service? Because we can see it both ways. That's why we ask questions. We think that this is not always clear. So it should be the date the staff actually hands over the authorization to the person and they take it to their landlord. That's when they're receiving the benefit. The actual check being cut is the fiscal side of things. So yeah, the benefit received is the issuance of the voucher to the customer. So I hope that makes sense, and we'll take questions at the end. So then here's a second scenario. So same person, and your local area allows multiple supportive service payments if they're assessed as such. So the next month, the same customer comes in and receives a second voucher for rent. How is that tracked? Well, we know you're going to put a very detailed case note about this. In the supportive service record called housing assistant, you would simply add another episode under that supportive service, case noting it the day you handed the customer their voucher. So you wouldn't document a service the date you handed them the voucher. Okay, there's their benefit. They know that they've received this benefit. It's authorized. What you wouldn't do is go ahead and when fiscal says, oh, we cut that check, go ahead and add another episode because, again, sorry to be so repetitive, we're not adding dates to align with fiscal cutting a check. So with that said, there may or may not be questions, and we can take those later. And of course, follow up with any email you would like to send us on this. We vetted these answers. Okay, so kind of shifting away from a specific supportive service, measurable skills gain. So it's one of our WIOA Title I measures for adult dislocated workers and youth. There's several different types of measurable skills gain that we can report and get credit for. It's one of our negotiated performance measures. The most detailed information on measurable skills gain is in TEGL 1016 Change 3. Our state policy, which will mirror that, is being updated. Sometimes, we can just put it in some more plain language. We're still planning technical assistance. And this, to be honest, is a repeat slide because we provided a lot of updates. It's just slower going with the transition into a new system because the way that we have you documenting MSGs now will look a lot different. And we are working on a cheat sheet. There's a whole group of you that are vetting this and trying to get the very best examples in there. Our goal for our goal for MSGs is to remove all the confusion on what's allowable. And then one update on this slide is that, and this is a request, high school, so the Teagle, I should go back to this, added EFL subtypes. What does this mean on this slide? Teagle 1016 has been around. Change 3 is the newest iteration where Department of Labor and ETA went in and added some brand new information on MSGs. Under educational functioning level, where we used to think pre-test, post-test, simpler ones, they added a couple subtypes of the EFL now. So we're working on completely defining Carnegie units. There's one for someone in secondary if they go into post-secondary. And then now we get to count GED tests. So for anyone who's in the measure and is taking tests associated with their GED and passing them, we get to report that. So in current systems, those get reported, documented as a skills progression / exam type. So that's how we're handling those right now in current systems, and they're completely allowable. Okay, so our little need to know column, this is the new point. When you go ahead and add a high school diploma or their equivalent, which we all do, anytime someone in secondary receives that in the program, I know it gets added to that add credential screen in either system respectively. Please, if you know anything to tell your staff, go in and add it to the exit screen where it's like collecting those outcomes for credentials, that module, real time. Try not to wait until time of exit for that person. The system MSGs, the way they work, the person's in it year after year. So we need for that to get reported real time, not just waiting till you actually need to go in and do some data entry on that exit screen. So with that said, please write down any questions you have about this and we'll take them at the end. But thank you very much. And the rest of it, I will hand it over to Mark Burgess.
Thanks, Paula. Just follow up to your last slide on performance measures. We want to reiterate a couple of the tens. We always talk about the Teagles and sometimes forget to focus back on the training and employment notice guidance that we receive from DOL. So we want to make these two aware to you again, and reminder of credential, reporting training, reporting outcomes. Especially, as we know, the current system is designed a little bit inconsistent with guidance, and we've tried to give you some of that guidance on how to use current limitations to still capture everything and get credit. Because that's the biggest thing, is we want to make sure everyone's getting credit for the work that all of you are doing, that your participants are getting the outcomes intended, and all the successes are being captured in your performance. So with credentials and under the 10, 25, 19, we want to make sure that all of our coordinators are looking at training programs appropriately, making sure there's a credential, an acceptable credential intended to be part of the outcome of that program for the participant. And we know there's several types of what we would maybe someone would call a certificate that doesn't count as a credential or doesn't count as an MSG. So read through those again. Make sure you're clear on what credentials are. As a coordinator, make sure you're ensuring you're approving programs that have appropriate accrediting or accredited credentials as the outcomes, so that we can capture those at the end. And as always, from a participant perspective, any activities that they're going to engage in should be discussed between them and their career planner or career coach, and should be documented in either individual employment plan or the individual service strategy if they're youth. This should all be done ahead of time, and ensuring that we're selecting services that are appropriate, especially as we get into training, that we're selecting training that will lead to the outcomes intended. As we look at 1019-22 and the change to that, There are all types of specific training possibilities. And what this section is applying to, pages 8 and 9 both, is that sometimes people get more than one training program, but you can only submit one of those at a time, even though you might have a confusion on, well, they went through two types of training. Why wouldn't I capture them both? But in the system, we can only capture the most specific type of training. So, for example, I enter and enroll as a participant into a RAP program, a registered apprentice program. That could be considered a work-based learning program, could be certainly considered on-job training to some people. But in essence, it's a RAP, and that's what should be selected as the type of training that we're submitting in the system so that when we go to report that from a state perspective to Department of Labor, in our system, it gets reported accordingly. You can also find clear definitions of all these types of trainings and those that aren't considered training in the services matrix that's attached to career planning policy, policy 4.2, which is found in e-policy. I'm going to show some of these screens here in a little bit. But all of these links hopefully are working for you when you get your PowerPoint in the PDF version, that you can quickly get to these documents either on DOL's website, on e-policy, or some of the external links that you're going to see in future slides. So let's transition a little bit to the demand occupation training list. This has been updated several times since our major overhaul back, I think, in 2021 or 2022, where we did a lot of changes because we had new data and information. Since then, we've had new petitions. We've had a minor update from a state perspective based on our CEJA programs, wanting to make sure that we're allowing you to enroll individuals in programs that lead to those types of jobs that the CEJA program, if you have that in your local area, are designed to focus on. So what is the demand occupation training list? Well, WIOA requires that every state create a demand occupation list. It doesn't define how that is supposed to be created, but the State Workforce Board, the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, working with us and some of our partners, including some of the local partners, help craft the criteria that determines what demand occupations are. And we settled on 3 criteria that include education, job openings, and wages. And there are certain limits to when each of those criteria allows it to be a demand occupation. And in some instances, as we get into later slide, you'll see that these can actually be reduced in nature depending on how we look at them, except for the very first one. For an education status required for the job, primarily for the job. So we look at employer input and what they expect of a candidate who's applying for their jobs. And in general, if the employers, majority of them are saying that it needs a high school diploma or equivalent, so your HSI or the GED, plus a moderate term OJT, then we can consider it for a demand occupation. On the upper side of the education status is we want to conserve our dollars, so we don't want to be paying for people to get their doctorates and their master's degrees. So we do make a cutoff on bachelor's degrees with long-term OJT. Anything above that, we would not allow to be considered a demand occupation, again, because it just limits the funding available to a majority of our participants, focusing only on 1 or 2 that want that type of training. And then your local policy may further define this. This education criteria does not in any way get compromised when we're looking at occupations. So there's never going to be a job or an occupation put on our list that only requires a high school diploma. You might ask why. Well, that's because what exactly is WIOA going to provide them from a training perspective that would allow them to qualify for that job if all they need is a high school education? We can work with our partners to get them the adult education they need, possibly to get their high school diploma or the equivalent, but we're not going to pay for training that leads to a job that they only really require a diploma, a high school diploma. So we don't relax that when we're looking at the the occupations to determine if they're in demand or not. Job openings, we set this, it's a percentage of overall people employed in Illinois. When we do the next update to this might change a little bit because the number of employed might have changed from when we calculated this number. And then the average wage or median wage is used. It's an hourly wage of 22.51. And again, these last two criteria we might relax a little bit based on local petitions. We do accept those from local boards if they can provide us information. Maybe there's new information that says, hey, this is a new type of occupation. And when you did your list, Office of Employment and Training, you didn't consider it in demand, but we think it is in demand now. Or maybe there are a lot of employers that have picked up the need for an occupation. Even though it's not new, it's just a need that needs to be filled. And so they might submit several attestations from employers in the local area indicating that they do need these jobs filled. And so we will consider those. And again, we'll look at the three criteria above. We'll look at the employer information. We'll look at information from other sources that may be more reflective of current environment versus when we updated the demand list most recently. Except we will not compromise on the education status. And then these fall into 6 different tiers that we'll talk about next. Or in a couple slides. Sorry. But for you career planners, especially performance managers and others, what does the list tell us? And how can we best use that? Well, first of all, you got to know if something's in demand. And there's multiple resources you're going to want to use to determine that. You're first going to start with our list, the Demand Occupation Training List, or DOTL. That's found as an attachment to our Policy 7.3 on eligible training providers and training programs. You can go to Illinois WorkNet. I'm gonna bring these screens over and show you a few of these. Hopefully this is going to work. Yeah, great. So here's your e-policy. We can scroll down. Hopefully everyone's familiar with e-policy. We can scroll down and we can see under Chapter 7, which is Program Services, we have eligible training providers and programs here. And if I click on any area of this policy, we'll pull up that section of the policy, and you'll see all these helpful information here on the right in various tabs. And if I open up the notices, you'll see the Demand Occupation Training Notice 20 NOT-08 Change 2. You'll see our most recent update was mid-year last year. So that's where you would open up the full list to determine what is being considered in demand at the current time. And we update this as we need to, again, based on petitions or new grants that maybe want us to focus on additional jobs that otherwise might not have made the list. Someone's asking about when we anticipate overhaul of the list. We certainly will do that before 2.0 comes out, probably quite a bit before that. We've got some newer information. It's just taken us some time to populate the new list. And in all honesty, I think it's only affecting a handful of jobs because most of the changes are not in getting them in demand or maybe even dropping off demand. It's just changing the tier that they're in right now. And as we talk here a little bit here in the presentation, we'll point out what the tiers mean and how while there are 6 different tiers, they're still all in demand and they should all be considered equally in most instances. So here's how you find attachments, notices to policies. You can go to the Demand Occupation Search. I'm going to grab that because a lot of people don't find this out there on Illinois WorkNet very easily, but it's from the main page. And if you scroll down to the tiles, you will find demand occupations. You can find that up here in the menu. You can do Explore Careers, and then you can find the Demand Occupation Search as well here. But this here allows a career planner working with their participant to say, okay, what is it that I am interested in? And maybe it's truck driving. So I'm going to plug in truck and just see what comes up. And it's going to come in with a couple occupations that may be in demand. It shows two occupations here. If all I use as a search is truck, probably not a good search. But this, I just wanted to point out where this is at. Multiple ways you can do search. If you know the ONET code of a job that's of interest, you can plug that 6-digit ONET code in here. If you know an industry maybe that they're interested in, you could pull up this career cluster, and find that industry. So maybe it's hospitality, or maybe it's health services. Maybe they want to go into um, oops, boy, that's not working right now. So we'll have to check with Illinois WorkNet and see what's going on. They may be doing some updates, but it should come up with a list of occupations that are in that career cluster. If you pick a career cluster, then you can pick one of multiple of their specific types of health sciences. Um, and if you know your tier, and I'm going to caution you before I get into the tiers, don't be so fixated on the tiers 1 through 6. Just know that if it's low priority, it's actually no priority. It's not a priority and should not be focus of discussions, because we wouldn't allow you to enroll someone in that type of training. If it has a 0, red is the color for low priority. It again really means no priority. And maybe you've looking at the education OJT again. I mentioned that you might want to look at that because someone says, "Well, I need a job fairly quickly. I'll go through a little bit of OJT, but I'm not going through an associate's or a bachelor's degree program." So you could pick up tiers that are less than 2 years, and find occupations that fit that if they are not certain necessarily their cluster, but they know how much training they want to go into. Um, Demand occupation are tied to the programs that are approved on our list. So you can come to this WIOA training program search to find training programs that you can enroll participants in. We won't go into this too much, focus on this. We will be doing a more thorough discussion on training programs and the total as we get closer to implementation or rollout of 2.0, because that'll be part of the training that you should be receiving as part of that rollout. But you can see any program that's currently eligible and on our list, and you can see there's quite a few throughout the state, over 4,000 programs for you to check into. But as you start going through this type of search, you'll be able to whittle it down to what's in your local area, and the topics or occupations of interest. So I'm going to go back right now to our slide here. I've shown you some of these systems. The final way you can look for demand occupations is on the Illinois Workforce Development System. When you are plugging in occupational training as a service code, you're going to be required to put the ONET search in. And it will tell you whether that job is in demand or not. It'll give you the code, the tier, the color code, I should say, and the tier if it is a demand occupation. And if it comes up red, then it's not an occupation that you can search for a training program to enroll a participant into. So keep that in mind. And I apologize, I don't have the screen in front of me pulled up for what that looks like. But when you're in there in that occupational skills training or any type of training, it's going to ask you for that ONET code. And it may look a little bit different for the Career Connect system for our local LWIA 7 partners up in the Chicagoland area, but the principle is still the same. You've got to be able to look up and find an occupation that is actually in demand. So from a career planning perspective, we've showed you how you find out if something's in demand, but what does it really mean to you if you're working with participants, or you're a supervisor over career planners, maybe you're the ETPL coordinator. And the most important thing is that we're working with the participant throughout this process. We're discussing with them their interests, not defining for them what's available in the local area and what they need to pick from, but what they're interested in. Otherwise, you could lead them down a path that's not going to lead to success because it's not something they're interested in. Maybe it's not something they're suitable for. So using career planning policy 4.2, going back to the e-policy page, we showed you 7.3 on. You can scroll through and find policy 4.2 to find a little bit more. I mentioned this before. You need to make sure you're documenting all of this in case notes, or if it's a service oriented, you're putting that in their career plan. You want to have them complete the career interest survey. Find out what it is they're interested in, what some of their hobbies might relate to an occupation, how they can take their past experiences and relate that to new experiences and new opportunities. We've talked about the demand occupation search. There are many online resources to find occupational information, such as the ONET Online, which is a lot of our information you find under occupations is built off of the ONET Online system. I'm going to pull one up here real quick. Go back over here. If you go on online, if I put in electrician, it's going to bring up a list of things related to electrician with the most relevant at the top. One thing to be cautious when you come to this website and make sure the career planner, I'm sorry, the participant understands this. The Bright Outlook is their Bright Outlook nationally. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a demand occupation in Illinois. So you've got to match these occupations up to the demand occupation training list and not assume that something here that looks sunny and bright on the ONET side is going to be the same in Illinois. So you can open this up and you can see all kind of related tasks, skills, activities, the work that they should expect to do for that kind of job. There's just a wealth of information. We bring a lot of this information over to our training program website on Illinois WorkNet, but you can go there to find even more information if you wish. Illinois Job Link that the Department of Employment Security uses is a good resource for information for job openings. That's going to be part of what you want to look at is what's available in our local area. Once you find out an occupation that they might have interest in, you want to make sure they're suitable for that. Not only for that occupation, but also the training. We don't want to send someone down a training program into a training program that ultimately they're unable to get a job in. Perfect example is that of someone with some kind of a driving record that would prohibit them from driving over the road. We don't want to discuss with them potential enrollments in training for over the road truck driving if they're not going to be able to get a job in it because of their driving record. So suitability is big. There's a lot more than simply looking at their driving record. Are they able to do the job physically, mentally, what have you? Whatever those considerations are, you're going to want to do that. And if not, are there resources you can help them prepare them for that? Just don't automatically say, well, doesn't look like you're a good fit for this job. Let's look at something else. If our services, our partner services, can help them prepare for that occupation, that's what we're here for. That's the WIOA overall umbrella is to provide them the services needed to prepare them for an occupation they're interested in and could potentially succeed in. We've talked about local policies. You should have local policies on supportive services, on the ETPL, on cost limitations. While we ask for cost for each training program, the state doesn't limit how much can be spent on a training program. We just want that information because it's useful to you locally, because you might have a policy that states you have a training limit, an ITA limit. And so you need to keep within that unless the participant is willing to expend some of their resources to allow them to participate in that training. The big thing with this is we don't only look at jobs that are in our local area because individuals might be willing to relocate either for or travel significant distances in some cases to get the training they need or actually for employment. We have a lot of people in Springfield, Illinois that travel from the St. Louis area, from Bloomington, Normal, Peoria, from quite a ways away to work in Springfield for whatever reasons. Good jobs, good benefits, good pay. Maybe the only thing that met their interest. So you want to make sure that you're talking to your participants about their desires and ability to work outside of your local area. So even if your local area information might suggest your local market information or employment projections might indicate that an occupation of interest isn't really in demand in your area, you want to speak to that individual and find out if maybe they're willing to relocate or travel. Some of the final resources you want to look at locally. If they are pretty adamant about sticking around the local area, their family is there, they've built relationship with friends and families, and they've just kind of settled into one area of the state, then you're going to want to look more locally, because remember, the demand occupation training list is a statewide list showing statewide demand and statewide data. It does not show local data. So you'll want to go out to the employment security website, look at their labor market information. I'm going to just quickly show a couple of those pages. So you'd come out to Illinois Job Link. I showed you that before. But on the employment Department of Employment Security website, you see here, you can scroll through labor market information. You can scroll through employment projections. And what's nice about their website is in some instances, they break this down regionally, but also locally. So here you can see some projections locally. So you can download this file, find your local area, find local areas nearby that someone might be willing to relocate to. And find out what the projections are more locally, more specifically, and not just where the large metropolitan areas are in Illinois. And maybe you might find that some of the interests of that individual don't meet the demands locally, and you need to speak to them about that, and they might need to revise their expectations and their interests if they don't want to relocate. So again, some really good links here that you'll want to use if you're not already using them to whittle it down to what types of occupations they're interested in. We're not going to jump into ETPL much more than that, but all of that dictates the types of training programs an individual might be eligible to enroll in, because it's got to be tied to those demand occupations and their interests. Which is tied to their individual employment plan or their individual service strategy. So let's go a little bit more into the actual DODL and how it was created. There are 3 tiers of demand. They're grouped 2 by 2 by 2, so I've done that here. 2 of them, the highest level, are called high priority. Tiers 5 and 6. What does that mean? It means it's going to take quite a bit of training, bachelor's degree or potentially higher for some of those. But if it's higher, actually, we wouldn't put it in here. So I backtrack on that. It's going to take at least bachelor's degree and OJT. That's what the higher level means, not above bachelor's degree, such as master's, doctorate, things of that nature. But it could require some OJT in addition to the bachelor's degree itself. High priority also brings with it very high wages, above the median wage rate that we use for calculating demand occupations. You can see those up in the right-hand corner. How we calculate each of those, I mentioned them briefly earlier, but these are the calculations and determinations that are made to decide if they're in demand. Now, tiers 3 and 4 are the good ones to keep in mind, because this is where we relax either the job opening projections or the wage rate. So if something does not meet either one of those, but meets the other one in a strong way, so maybe the wages for an occupation are only $20 an hour median, we might put it on the list because there's 1,000 or 2,000 potential openings throughout the state. So we will look at that and we will add those on. Or we might relax the job openings because the wage rate is really high. If it's maybe $40, $50 an hour, expectation is a median rate, we will potentially reduce this 646 number down to as low as 400, I think, in some instances. So there is some relaxing in the first and the third, but not of the education. In no instance will we relax the lower and upper tiers or upper status of these educations. And so when you're talking with your participant, you're pointing these things out to say, what are your expectations of a job? And if they're looking for really high wages, that's going to limit the occupations you can talk to them about that they should have it of interest. It's going to limit them considerably on the number of programs that might be available on the training provider list in your area, especially as we get into the smaller local areas where there are less programs available, less training providers for them. So again, from a career planning perspective, all of the conversations you need to have. The third tier down here, the third grouping, tiers 1 and 2, means they did not meet the criteria for demand, but either the state, which is number two tier, or the local board, a local board, or more local boards. Sometimes they come together and submit a combined petition. Petitioned us. We've looked at all the data and information they've provided, looked at newer information if it's available through some other source, and we've determined that we're going to add it to this. Some of the key ones here I mentioned are CEJA occupations because we want to make sure we're supporting the state initiative under the CEJA grants. And then the other one is a lot of the teaching occupations did not meet the criteria. Generally, it's the wages that might be just a little bit below the median wage that we accept. But we've added almost all the teaching occupations because we know it's really in demand everywhere throughout the state. There's not an area of this state, I think, that has enough teachers. And so we've added those on here to ensure that we have people getting trained in those if that's their interest. And then I want to focus again on this low priority. While it's a tier on this list, and with a future update, I'm gonna make sure we change this from low priority to no priority because that's what it really means. If something has a red colored tier 0, they cannot use that occupation to determine a training program, period. Appreciate any questions. If you have them, go ahead and place them in the chat. I'm trying to follow along there, but haven't seen any at this point in time. Although Cindy Mayer, let me read that one real quick before we go too further into this. Student of Title 1B. Oh, she's back at that. That's the follow up to supportive services. So hopefully we're following along here. I've mentioned some of what's on this slide. And some of the key considerations you as a career planner speaking with the participants need to keep in mind. How soon do they want to get employed? Most of our people just got laid off from jobs or have been out of employment for a period of time and are looking for jobs now, right? Maybe jobs before today. They've been looking for quite a while before they came to our program. They just need to get a job. And so that's going to dictate that they're probably not interested in occupations in that green high priority tier because they don't want to go through 4 years of training. They may not even want to go through 2 years of training. So you're starting to drop down the tiers. But again, tiers 1 through 6 are all open for discussion with the participant. Don't think that you should limit yourself to any one of those 6 tiers until you've had those conversations with a participant and start determining that maybe tier 6, because of the training length, is out of question. It's not something they're interested in, and you start dropping yourself down in these tiers. The wage maybe doesn't meet their criteria, etc. What type of training do they want to engage in? Do they want to engage in only classroom training? That's going to dictate certain jobs. Maybe they don't want to go to class. Maybe they want something online. Some training programs are only offered online, which means only certain occupations may be available for demand if all they want is an online type of training. So what type of training is it they're looking for? Maybe they have a family and they can only do online training because they've got to watch the kids as much as they want to get to work. They can't relieve themselves from being tied at home to do the training, and so that's a consideration here. How likely are they to get a job once they've completed training, completed an application, and even maybe gone through an interview? Again, those projected job openings are very important in this. And if you drop down this list of tiers to one of those occupations that have less projected openings statewide and maybe even a lot less locally, it might not be an occupation of interest that they should be pursuing. And I've mentioned the wages. We all have expectations when we get a job. Some people have less expectations because the need for any job is more critical than getting a really good paying job right off the bat. It may be something that has to come over time, get started in the bottom levels and work their way up. And maybe we can help them as a program to do that as well. So with these last couple ones, couple things to keep in mind, and I didn't think to put this other one on here until I saw some of our trade partners or our trade staff from OET on the call today or on the webinar today. But two things: if there is a contract training service that is of interest, such as a registered apprenticeship program, such as an OJT with an employer in the local area, the demand occupation does not apply. Why is that? Because the intent of those types of trainings is that there is a job awaiting the individual participant upon successful completion, and they would be hired into that job because they did complete it according to all the criteria before enrolling in that type of training. So keep that in mind. We'll relax this because we know they're going to get a job. Now, hopefully, we don't have a lot of OJTs leading people into very low paying jobs, but that's part of the contract development between your local areas and the employers. And we probably don't have too many of those out there because it's just not one of the discussions that you're holding locally. The other exception to this are our trade partners. If your participants, and I know we're dwindling down on the number of individuals that are eligible for trade grants or trade program, but if you do have participants that are co-enrolled in trade and the dislocated worker program, the trade program is the overarching criteria for training, and they do not have a demand occupation criteria. So they can train in anything. It's a much better program in that respect for individuals that fit the trade criteria or trade program. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't have some of these considerations we're talking about the WIOA Title One side of it, because again, all of these criteria should still be talked about to that individual or with that individual to ensure that they're picking occupations or ultimately one occupation that they might be interested in. They're picking the right wages, they're picking the right training, they're picking what's best for them and what is allowable in the local area. So for the trade program, it fits the same way. You don't have to have this demand list, but all these criteria are of importance. What does our demand occupation training list look like? This is just a little bit of a snippet of it, and keeping in mind that tier on the right, I've given a little bit more. This is in the WIOA notice on the demand occupation training list, so you can go to that notice to find this chart on the right. But it shows you what it means to fit into each of the 6 tiers, and then the low priority or again no priority, not a demand occupation there at the bottom. The numbers in the box are really supposed to be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but our Excel sheet filled them in this way, and I didn't get it corrected before I put it in here, so I apologize for that. But you can see where our higher wages, higher training is up at the top, and then we start relaxing those a little bit in the middle with the yellow and light yellow tiers, and then with the orange, which is our petition, whether it be state in that dark orange or local in the light orange criteria. And again, it's important to know when they're petition occupations because it means they didn't meet either the demand or the the demand or the wages initially, and maybe that's something of importance to the participant, so you might not be focusing as much on these petitions. Plus, a local petition is a petition that came from one area or maybe a couple that grouped together in the state. So it might be in demand in their local area, but it might not be in demand in your local area. You know, best example are those occupations that we find traditionally in Chicago, in the largest metropolitan area of Illinois, that we don't find downstate. However, on the converse of that is we find a lot of agricultural, maybe related jobs downstate that we're not going to find in Cook County necessarily. So you know, it works both ways as far as the available jobs. Looking at the left-hand side of this chart, you can see some of these occupations. The blue line just means I've skipped some occupations so that on the right-hand side of this table, you can see all the different demands from 0 on up to 6. It doesn't mean anything other than that. The blue line just that shows something has been hidden when I produce this. The far left-hand side doesn't mean anything. That was just the old code. We will be taking that out when we do a major update. I don't think anyone remembers those codes anymore. And in most instances, they didn't change, but you will see a few of them changed in this table, such as computer user support specialists. So you'll need to look at the second column for the occupational code that would be in our system today. If you look up that left-hand occupation code, it'll show you no occupation matches that because that's been discontinued. With every update ONET does, they get more precise in trying to break down occupations, and so they break out one occupation into multiple new occupations to show specialized skills that maybe are new in the work environment since the last time they did an update. But anyway, you'll see all those differences. You'll see the code. You'll see the 3 criteria here on the right hand side of the actual title of that job. What you won't see that you see on ONET online is an 8-digit code. So maybe under marketing managers, 11, 20, 21, there might be a point 00, point 01, point 02, and so on that breaks down that even further. Probably more precisely under chief executives or general and operational managers, you might find that. We group them all together equally. So even if there's no demand in the 11, 10, 21 general and operational managers with an extension of point 02, but there is for point 00, then we're putting all of them on here. So don't get too caught up if you see a list and they have those 2-digit extensions past the decimal point. Ignore them. If it's on here, anything with the 6-digit prefix will be in demand. And you see the wages and the education code, and again, something like recreation and fitness teachers. That's one we did not put on here because it requires too much training. An education code or OJT code of 29 is well above what we would fit onto this chart, even in tier 6. I think our cutoff is number 29 or 26. Anything above that would not make demand. And anything below 7 does not make our list. I don't have any of those examples on this, but that's the high school education only, or maybe requires just a minimal amount of OJT. You know, every job requires some OJT when you start on it. Even some of those that require only a high school education, you still have to learn the employer's specific expectations. So that's a type of low OJT required, and we don't put that on our list because it's just, again, specific to that occupation, getting you acclimated, ready to go after only a few days on the job. So hopefully that shows you what this looks like, and again, explains to you what the tiers mean. And again, it just breaks down further the information that created the demand. It does not determine that it's not in demand unless it's red. All the other 6 tiers are in demand statewide. You'll figure that out locally based on the information you have locally. Not seeing any questions. I'll finish the last couple slides and then we'll open up the phone lines. 2.0, we talked about this last time, or Paula talked about this earlier as well. We continue with our discovery. Many of you on our call today have been involved in that discovery, involved in testing of the draft setup of the new 2.0. That will be ongoing for the next several months. Early in 2026, we'll start developing training. We sent out a notice of funding opportunity. Many of you have applied for that, or your local areas or local boards have applied for that. We're looking at this at a regional approach. So multiple local areas are going to work together to identify their trainers for 2.0 and the topics related to 2.0. So keep an eye out that from your local leadership on whether, you know, or who that's going to be, when that might start. It'll start first with us providing the training to all those trainers. It's kind of a train the trainer model, and then those trainers will then bring together all the local staff in those regions and provide the necessary training for that. We don't really have any new updates on 2.0 specific wise. Again, if you're part of our discovery, we appreciate all the time you've been putting in. We're meeting one or more times every week to get information from you, to do some testing. We've got a major testing next week that will bring some of you together here in Springfield to do some testing together breakout sessions on various topics. So we look forward to those of you that are going to be coming to join us. And we're still expecting that we're going to deploy on July 1st. Many things will still be happening beyond July 1st, such as reporting our quarterly and annual reports that might tie back to the original or current IWDS system. But we hope to and think we're still on track to have that July 2026 deployment. So keep an eye out for any updates that you might see from us or from your local leadership, because they're involved in some of the discussions as well. As always, we expect everyone to be reporting timely. Paula went over a little bit of this slide. It's been minimally changed, identifying some of the things that you should be looking at. We've got policy that states that once you're aware as a career planner or as a program that a service has been provided, information has been gathered, or any other types of activities have occurred, we expect that those are entered into the system within 10 working days. So that's a 2-week period. It's important that you do that as quickly as possible so that it's not forgotten and overlooked, especially as it relates to something that is service-based that might result in new services or that results in a performance outcome. We want to get those in the system so they aren't omitted and we get all the credit we can for all the services, all the efforts, all the successes of your programs. So without going into too many of these, just start looking at that. It's coming it's coming quickly, where the end of the first half of the program year will be here. So start taking a look at your participant pools, seeing if you had entered all of your participant services, seeing if you had entered all of your performance implicative information such as MSGs, credentials, what have you. Here are some common errors we get when we submit the quarterly and annual reports into Department of Labor. It's called the Workforce Integrated Performance System, or WIPS, WIPS. It kicks back errors to us when it sees something that it doesn't agree with. It doesn't match the criteria. Maybe it's a length of numbers for a wage. That's one of those that are on here that we get a kickback all the time. Someone will enter 10,000 and then select hourly when a participant has told them how much they've made and it wasn't matched with IEDS. Sometimes that happens. IDS doesn't pick it up. Maybe you're talking to your participant shortly after they exit the program and become employed, and you're just checking in on how they're doing, and you say, by the way, you are employed, right? And what are your wages? Where are you working at? They give you that information. You go in the system, you enter the wages, and they told you their quarterly wage for, say, the first quarter or even the second quarter, which really matters from a performance perspective, and you enter 10,000 and then select hourly. Currently, IWDS allows that, unfortunately. But when we submit the report, it gets kicked back immediately. In 2.0, we're going to correct this. We know nobody's making $10,000 an hour. That'd be great if someone is making that kind of wage. If so, you'll just want to let us know under 2.0, and we'll make an exception and somehow go in there and change that wage to be accurately reflected. But for the most part, we're going to limit this to 3 digits because the system that we report in only allows 3 digits. So we reach out to you on a regular basis, some of the local areas, and say, hey, we've got some wages here that have too many digits. Can you please check in and change this? Maybe it was an annual wage you were trying to enter, 50,000, yet you still left it as hourly or monthly, and it might get kicked back. Case notes, we want to make sure those are occurring at least every 30 days. Keep in contact with your participant so you don't lose them. But also make sure you're entering those into the system within 10 days. We've got quite a few people still showing as they've not had a service within 110 days. Now we allow just an exception to the 90-day rule. They have to be exited if they aren't receiving services within 90 days, but we allow the case management activity to occur. So we give you the 10 days and give you a few more days, actually. So be looking at the system to see if you've got anyone that has reached 100 or 110 days without having exited that individual. In the new system, we're going to have automated exits, so that's not going to happen. You're going to automatically have somebody exited if you've not entered something accurately. So, we won't see as many of these pop up, but we want to make sure you're getting those entered now. So take a look at your participant pool. Make sure all this information is entered in. Our current system allows that people have open services for over 18 months. There are dozens upon dozens of people statewide that have this criteria. We can see this in IPATS, the individual. I don't remember this. Illinois Performance Accountability and Transparency System, IPATS. I should have put that on here because I had a time to try and remember it. But in the iPad system, we can see all of these things in this bottom row may be occurring. And we can see that people are being left with open services not being exited in a timely manner. If this is the instance, a situation, you're going to have to contact us to say, hey, yeah, we are done serving that individual. We forgot to apply their exit, program exit. Can you do it? Because you don't have the ability to do it when it extends beyond a lengthy period of time, such as 110 days. And then finally, and most, I don't want to say most important, but really important is that we're getting credit for the performance outcomes we should. Not only the credentials, which I didn't include here, but the MSGs. You should be entering MSGs as they occur. Many programs have many opportunities for measurable skill gains, such as through tests or progression of skills, skills progression. So make sure you're entering those once you find out from your participants that those are occurring. From an ETPL coordinator standpoint, you should be expecting your providers to outline what MSGs are available and to be earned from a participant enrolling in that system. Under draft policy, we're going to expect that providers outline all of the outcomes of their program, such as the credential. And we talked about some of the sources they can learn about credentials earlier today, and the MSGs, and tell us when those can be achieved so that we can follow up. I should say you're doing all the work locally so that you can follow up with that individual to say, hey, I understand you should have taken a test last week. Did you take it? Did you pass it? Let's get that recognized as an MSG if it qualifies for one. Last couple slides, real quick. We shared this. Everyone knows that Jim Potts, who was our eligibility guru, knew everything about eligibility, but also helped us in so many other areas, such as testing IWDS, responding to your questions about the IWDS system, assisting LWIA 7 even with Career Connect on many occasions, and many other things, has retired. So, anything related to what he was doing is being reassigned to many other people here in our performance and reporting unit. So take note of this slide and make sure you're reaching out to the right people so that we can quickly respond to your questions. I really want to thank all of you. I think what you've done is learn well from Jim, because I don't think we're getting as many questions from all of you as Jim used to get. Maybe we relied more on Jim than we needed to. All of our trainings, we're trying to prepare you to identify the answer yourself through the resources we provide you through these webinars. And I think a combination of Jim and these webinars has really prepared all of you to make your own decisions. I applaud all of you for that. So keep up the great work in figuring these things out yourself, but certainly you're going to have instances that you need our assistance. So identify the appropriate contact. In all these instances, make sure you're CCing me if I'm not the primary person. And until we get some more staff and a manager to our unit, this is what it's going to look like for the foreseeable future. We'll open it up for questions now. Antonio, if you want to let anyone that wants to ask a question raise their hand, and we'll respond to them appropriately. This is our next quarterly office hours. We've switched from the third week to the second week because we had a lot of conflicts on that third week. I've not been able to join these and have relied on Paula heavily and also Ray and some of the local areas to present. So we've switched this. Some of our local partners couldn't join on that third week. And they're going to be the second week, the second Wednesday of every quarter now, except for, note at the end of next year, it does conflict with the Veterans holiday that we just honored yesterday, observed yesterday. So we are going to move it up a week at the end of 2026. But put these on your calendar. Until further notice, this link will work for all of them. There's no registration required. As we get information out about these, you'll be able to know whether it's appropriate for you to join or not. For the most part, they'll all apply to our directors and to our performance managers, but we hope to continue to provide relevant information for all of you as career planners, as well as our training providers and other partners. So, with that, anyone have any questions on anything that either Paula or I presented?
You should all be free to unmute yourselves.
I'll let it's a long question there from LaDonna. Appreciate that. I'll let Paula look at that and then either respond verbally or a response at the in the chat itself. Any other questions from anyone? Was this helpful, especially just giving you some updated information on MSGs, on the ETPL, and specifically on the demand occupation? Was this helpful? Thumbs up, maybe, from many of you, if you thought this helped you in what you do on a daily basis, communicating and speaking with your participant pool. Great, getting a lot of thumbs up and a few comments in the chat. Like I said, we will, as we roll out 2.0, have a more thorough discussion of both ETPL and the demand occupation training list, and to be frank, everything, because we're developing a system that is going to be more intuitive, that's going to help you walk through all of the things around eligibility, around these decisions that need to be made, around career planning. And so hopefully the training and the system itself will help you in your everyday activities once we can get to that point of deployment to the new system. I don't know, Paul, if you want to respond to LaDonna.
Yeah, I was typing it.
Yep. Okay.
So, LaDonna, yes, that's a limitation in IWDS because career planning policy says, don't be providing supportive services if they don't have another WIOA funded service open. But that's not the case. Like I said, you can be in another funded training, but you do need to be active. We have so many same day services. You don't have to have an open service to get supportive service, right? So, what we do is there should be another career planning service, for example, um, documenting the decision point for the review of their ISS or IEP that now you're meeting with them and providing this. Sorry if that seems tedious, but that will allow you to ensure that your supportive services are documented during participation and not after exit and will be allowable. Does that make sense? I was typing a response and I still can.
So just to clarify, sorry, Paula, I'm just
No, I know what you mean.
clarify, the career planner would open a career planning same day service, type in their career planning same day service case note, blah, 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 blah. And then at the same time, open the supportive service same day supportive services for the book voucher or whatever we're doing to document, the issuance of the supportive services, and that's okay.
Yes, and most likely there's already been a career planning, so they could add an episode. What will happen, as we know, if you try to enter a supportive service and they have a career planning service that was like 20 days before that, you can typically get the error, right? That you can't add a supportive service without another open service, career or training. That's what happens,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So
Yep.
this is not a workaround because you are doing career services with them that justify and support the supportive service, right? Since the system won't allow you to add it, yes, document an additional career planning episode or look at the matrix. Like if there was like vocational exploration or other things going on, I mean, maybe that was a bad example, then use the appropriate career service. Because likely, and Tamika and Laura and I have looked at these scenarios, there was some other benefit provided, whether it be advice, career planning, job exploration, something you're helping them with employment and training, even though sometimes it just looks like it's one of those cut and dry stuff, like you're handing them transportation or housing or childcare vouchers. So that is the rule for current IWDS. Since if you try to enter one of your supportive services for 1A, 1D, nothing else is open, it'll make you think that it's not allowable. So document a career service.
Great. Thanks,
Thank you.
Paul.
I appreciate
Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense? I
Can I
hope.
just add
Make,
to get a little clarification? Sorry. So I
Mhm.
had typed in a scenario. So if we have Title II adult ed who wants to refer someone for supportive services, is is that allowable?
Um,
Two, I mean, would that be like you mentioned, just put in a clear career planning and then
um,
provide the supportive service?
well, so
Or is
there
that
are a
not
couple
allowable?
things. Referrals are allowed. We don't have a tracking mechanism in place. If you're saying that your customer, you know that they're receiving a service that you're not paying for, I wasn't going to get into a lot of services detail. So how you flag your list to know that, right? You can use a training called training paid by non-WIOA Title I funds. Then case note that to justify. So if anyone ever comes like, your Title 1A didn't even pay for any of their training, but yet they have a bunch of transportation to class. Well, yes, they were in training. We just don't have a good mechanism to report it as like services codes right now because we don't have the referral hookup. But does that make sense? That
It
is what
does. Yeah.
that code is for. It's in the matrix, way at the bottom on the training tab. It's down there grouped up with the services that are just for tracking things. They don't get reported or trigger exit or anything. So I would document that with case notes to support the support. Yeah, to justify it.
Okay, thank you. I don't know that our staff was aware that this could happen, but I had Title II saying, "Hey, we're being told that we should refer our people to you guys," and I'm like, "Wait, I need clarification." So
If
it can
the
be done, but there
if
we have to kind of do the workaround.
and if they're also if the support is not available with them, if they've exhausted it for whatever reason, like WIOA for this type of thing is the funding of last resort. So it just like I said, just as long as your local supportive services policy allow it and it can be justified as a need that can't be met elsewhere, and they still need to be participants as in receiving career services. Um, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that it makes sense now. Thank
Yes,
you.
they shouldn't just be
Yes.
in the program for months. They're like solely for supportive services level. Um, because I would imagine if they went to the point of enrolling and have a career coach or someone working with them, they're doing more. But I don't want to make that assumption, but just be sure.
Right, right. So they would still need to be doing basically career planning, meeting with them and checking in and all of that.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there could be other career services going on and taking place too, for sure. Um, and Mark put a note about a screen for used for data entry when you know a customer is participating in another program that we don't directly like report a service for in IWDS or Career Connect, and it's on the main menu. So if you go to concurrent programs, it's a screen in IWDS. At the bottom, I don't have it memorized. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's like Title II, a youth in youth build, Job Corps, and a couple other programs. It doesn't have a lot of logic built in. It won't like trigger a referral or anything like that. It's just a tracking. Is that what you're talking about, Mark? I hope.
Yeah. We just want to know. We don't have a good referral system, although that is something that's being worked on as we move towards IWDS 2.0. I don't know necessarily the timeline of the referral system, but we certainly hope to do better in tracking these. Just an example, our adult education partners nationally, WIOA programs and adult education show about a 6% co-enrollment. We're showing less than 1% in Illinois. And I think that's just people aren't showing it. We have no way of showing um, the system, the system that this is actually occurring. So a concurrent screen would be a nice, helpful tool for us to at least show that people are receiving services from both of these programs. And Mike Johnson, great. Thank you for showing a little bit of a screen. If you click on his chat, it'll show up what that concurrent program screen is. Um, and
Yeah,
one
there's
thing,
actually a few answered yes. It's a trade customer, so they got a few questions, or a few of those are answered yes.
right. And then the other one, I'm trying to find it on here, is the SNAP program. That's one where we're not showing the level that we thought we should be showing. Um, But, TANF, we know a lot of people are participating in that program that come to our program. So just take a look at this, become familiar with all of our partner programs under WIOA umbrella, and selecting these as a yes when we need to have them showing that information. We want to be as accurate as possible and again, get the credit for the system. Only through credit are we going to continue to be a viable program. Government's always looking at where they can save a dollar, and if our program isn't showing these things, we could be in jeopardy of losing funding. Um, One other thing under measurable skill gains, another thing I mentioned about making sure you're documenting an MSG, and you should be documenting every MSG. If I can earn 6 MSGs in a program year, let's document all of those. And let's start um, uh, looking into all the various types of MSGs. We've noticed from a reporting perspective, the EFL and the secondary school diploma are rarely used as types of MSGs, and we don't think those aren't occurring. We just think people are entering the easier test score from a let's say a junior college, community college program, or a skill progression, and not entering all of those that would apply and that were earned from a participant. So make sure you're entering all of the MSGs that are being earned. If you're a career planner, if you're performance and directors, please make sure your staff understand that we should be tracking each and every MSG. So that we again can get credit for it. We can only submit one on an annual report or a quarterly report, but we can track all of them and have a count of all the MSGs. It's just something we're not seeing maybe occur. The numbers are down, and maybe that's the reason. We don't know. We haven't looked at this too deeply, but because we think these other types of MSGs are being earned. So we ask that you are keeping track of that and making sure you're documenting each and every MSG being earned. Jody asked, will the system connect to specific educational suggestions and where the education could be obtained? The system's going to be intuitive only to a point. It's not going to be able to, if I pick a particular occupation, automatically give me a list of the providers and the programs that might lead to that. Maybe that's a 2.1, 2.2 phase, but not in our initial setup. But using those screens I showed earlier, the training program screen, you should be able to find easily by entering an occupation or multiple occupations the programs, and then you can under that training program screen you can filter it down to the local area or the distance the individual is willing to travel to receive their training. So use those screens on Illinois WorkNet to your advantage in preparing the individual for identifying both occupations and training programs. Another question is about FAQ. We are looking into a new FAQ. We haven't updated the FAQs in quite some time. They're not. It's not the most uh, easiest site to use. So we are looking at a new platform that I think will be a lot better. I just don't know when we will have that together as it relates to us focusing more on 2.0. So apologize that it has not been up to date, but we'll look at least into ours, the services matrix, and see if we can't get elements of that updated. And if you're looking for that, you're best off plugging in Illinois WorkNet Performance FAQ because that's the link URL is performance, not services matrix, even though it focuses on services matrix. You might be able to find it with a search for and I'm going to try to see if I can't show that real quick. Uh, this is what is being referenced. So you see up here, it's actually listed as a performance FAQ when in fact it focuses on services matrix. It's a little outdated. We apologize for that. We'll see if we can find some time to update these. But if you have a question about any of the responses here, look at the actual services matrix, and you should be able to find the most up-to-date information um, related to any of these questions that are in here. And if you don't, or if you have a question on whether what's the best answer, go ahead and email Paula and myself, and we'll provide a response to you. Yep, and Mike sharing just a screen print of the services matrix. It is attached to the career planning policy I mentioned. 4.2, I think, is the career planning policy. I've gone away from that, but if you go over here, I keep this as a safe, saved location e-policy. So this is your main splash page for e-policy. You can do searches. You can sort by chapters and things of that. You can print from here, and the print looks similar to what this table of contents looks like, except you get to pick what you actually want to print. So if you come down to the services matrix, service delivery, career planning, you can break this down by various aspects of career planning. But if you select any of these or the sub areas of career planning, you can come over here to the attachment. You can find that services matrix. So you can see the last time we updated this is 411, and that's the most accurate we have today. Even though we probably could take a look at that again and see if there's anything that needs updated. But that's how you find the services matrix that Mike's showing a screen print on. This is where you can find all the information on career services, training services, and follow up, as well as the youth program elements. Another couple minutes left. Any final questions from anyone? And yeah, LaDonna, thank you. It is very valuable to understand all of these services. What's nice about it, and I'm going to pull it up here, is that we give you not only the services definition, and you can see here we've got some updates in the version I've got, and I think this is the one that's out there on the WorkNet. I'm just showing this one, but you can come over to the right hand side here, and you can see the implications on performance that service might have, whether it applies for those that are aware of a minimum training expenditure requirement. It tells you whether this is a same day service, which most services are, but for those few that aren't same day services, you'll see a no in this column, indicating that it can be a long-term service such as training. And then it tells you whether it's an enrolling service or not, and that's key for whether it extends the 90-day participation towards program exit or not. It's very valuable for many aspects, and then as Paula noted, there are actually some. So I may have pulled up an older one. I think there's a new column K that you all can add local notes to your version. So if you download this, you can add local notes. Should be available in the version that's online, if I remember right. I just don't have that open up, so I'm going to see real quick. Oh, not going to let me when I'm on a WebEx. Too much going on here. So just take a look at that, and there should be a field where you can add local notes if you've discussed this internally. With that, I think we've addressed all of the questions. We really appreciate all of your time today. This will be posted as Antonio mentioned on both the Illinois WorkNet videos and training materials side, as well as the ICSPS WIOA webinars website. So you can access it either one of those. You get history of the webinars we provided. And we appreciate all of you joining us today. Have a safe day and travel. For those of you that are going to be joining us next week for the UAT testing on 2.0.
Have a great day, everyone.